Just because something is not perfect does not make it any less worthy of love. Your father made you believe otherwise. He made you believe that you needed to be without fault in order to be loved, but he was wrong. Should you need any proof of the matter, then just look here. I am tired of pretending, and I cannot continue acting as if I do not love you, because I do. I love all of you, even the parts that you believe are too dark and too shameful. Every scar, every flaw, every imperfection. I love you. You may think you are too damaged and too broken to ever allow yourself to be happy, but you can choose differently, Simon. You can choose to love me as much as I love you. That should not be up to anyone else. That cannot be up to anyone else. It can only be up to you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the podcast, I welcome you to what is perhaps our most salacious episode yet. Welcome to Pop Culture Catechism, talking about Bridgerton. Welcome to Pop Culture Catechism, conversations about music, movies, and the longings of the human heart. Let's get started. What is sexy? As a Christian, as a Catholic, as a person trying to be a decent person, is there such a thing as too sexy? Is there good sexy and bad sexy? And what about in our own lives? How do we know when what we find sexy is good or bad, when our own desires are healthy or unhealthy? Where should we draw the line with sexual content in movies and shows and music? Does this matter if I'm married, if I'm single, or I'm dating? What about sex outside of marriage? What about sex inside of marriage? What is its purpose? Why does it strike to our hearts? Why does it affect us so deeply? All of those are things that are brought up in Bridgerton, one of Netflix's top shows of all time. And I am very, very blessed today to welcome to the podcast my beloved bride, Maddy, who's here, and one of our patrons. You hear her name on every episode, Emily Comberiate. And so her husband, Tom, is home with the kids. Thank you, Tom, for lending her to us. And the reason I have these ladies here is because these are both devout women of God whom I love and respect. And they've both watched Bridgerton, and they have some thoughts. And I want to know what their thoughts are. My name is Mike Tenney. I'm a Catholic speaker and worship leader from Washington, D.C. I spent over a decade teaching in Catholic high school education and also trying to make it big as a rock star at night. Now I'm blessed to speak to thousands of people each year at events all over the place and through this podcast, Pop Culture Catechism. This is the gospel according to pop music and movies. We are part of Awaken Catholic, one of 8 shows. And in this show, we look for God's love in the media that you're plugged into. So then when we unplug and we put down our phones, put away our tablets, we can then go out and live that love in the real world and have a better understanding of God's love in our life. My goal by the end of this episode is not only may you have a deeper appreciation of Bridgerton, maybe have a more critical eye to look at sexy media, whether that be movies or music, but you would also have a better understanding of God's love in your life and how to live that out, especially through your sexuality. So I hope you're ready for this episode. We're going to talk about some controversial things, which if you're not a first-time listener, if you listen to the show all the time, you know we do not shy away from those things. If you are a new listener, you're welcome here. You may not agree with everything we say or we don't say, but we love to learn from the conversation. So thank you here. And if you have something to say, you can put it in the comments. A special thank you to our patrons who make this show possible through popculturecatechism.com and the Awaken app. I am very blessed today to welcome to the show Emily Comberiate and my wife, Maddy. How you guys doing? Good. Emily, tell us about yourself.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Emily. I'm a wife, mother to 3 boys, 6, 4, and will be 2 in October. And I'm currently a stay-at-home mom. Keeping up with 3 little rascals. I met Mike and Maddy through music ministry at their parish, and
great voice, by the way.
Thanks.
So, probably won't get to hear her sing today, but she's got a great voice. Yeah.
And my background's psychology. I studied psych in undergrad and went to grad school for school psych, but I'm enjoying being home and living out my vocation.
Yeah, I remember you walked up to us after Mass one time when we were playing, and you were just like, do you guys need singers? And I think my question was, well, are you any good?
What did I say? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but you said you'd sung a couple times, and so we welcomed you. You just seemed cool, and our families got to know each other. We hit it off right away, and I know you guys are some of our close friends in the area, and we really, like when we were getting some work done in our house, we had to be out of the house and went and stayed with you guys.
Yeah,
it was
that was
nice. So
great.
we really appreciate you guys' friendship.
And what was funny too is that when I walked up to you guys, my husband was like, that woman looks really familiar. And then, my husband, Tom, and Maddy went to grade school together for a couple of years. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Who the heck are you?
I'm Maddy. I'm his wife.
You hear about her all the time on the show.
Yes. So we have 2 kids, which I'm sure you've heard about in previous episodes. Almost 6 and 3. And I am a pediatric nurse practitioner in the
She's
emergency.
like hella smart.
I don't know how to
Nocturnal.
respond
My
it.
kids call you nocturnal.
Yes, I have a woman cave that I sleep in during the day that I love. I work nights.
Yep.
Mike stays at home.
Yeah, and you're really tired right now, so
Yes,
I appreciate you
very.
staying up to do this podcast with me. I was drag her on all my adventures, like when we went on mission trip with a bunch of my students to Belize, and you did the Encounter the Gospel of Life one year with me, and like youth ministry is like not your thing really, but she's
No,
always a good
it's
sport and
not.
comes with me, and so. Thank you once again for coming with me on all my crazy adventures and supporting me in all my crazy adventures. So those of you who listen to the show know that when I first got asked to do this show, my first thought was, what do you think of this, Mads? And she was like, oh, you'd be awesome at that. You would rock that. So she's like my biggest cheerleader. And I couldn't do it without your support, babe. So love you long time. All right, so let's talk about Bridgerton. So Bridgerton, here's the show description. It says, during the Regency era in England, their 8 close-knit siblings of the powerful Bridgerton family attempt to find love. So I had to look up the Regency era in England. Apparently, it happened in the early 1800s, just before the Victorian era. So that's about where we are, like 1800s French Revolution era. And for a time, it was the biggest show on Netflix. I think it's been eclipsed by Stranger Things and maybe Squid Game. But currently, its seasons sit at number 4 and 5 of the all-time biggest shows on Netflix. It has 2 seasons, so far, with plans for a 3rd and a 4th as well. Now, this show is known for being like really porny, steamy,
Spicy.
spicy, steamy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely kind of walks that line. So what I want to talk about is, you both you're both women of prayer, involved in the church, good marriages, good parents, holy women. And you both seem to have found something redeeming in this show, which I think a lot of people would say is just kind of like trashy. And anyway, so I just wanted to see what that was about. I have not watched this show. I just kind of want to hear what you guys have to say. I watched like a recap on YouTube of seasons 1 and 2, so I have a little bit of a background. But I'm mostly hoping here to kind of be a facilitator and then kind of throw some theology in there every once in a while. But mostly I want to hear what you guys have to say about the show. So first of all, what do you think, like just artistically, about like how the show is shot and acted and all those sorts of things? What are some things that you like about the show?
Well, you just talked about how it's set in the 1800s, but like costumes and that type
Gorgeous,
of stuff is, but not like really consistent. It's like modernized,
Right.
Like their dresses and stuff. So that's kind of cool. I remember when you first watched it, you loved the music.
Yeah, they do like classical orchestra, but like modern pop music, like
Yeah.
songs that are relevant to kind of the storyline.
I heard
So
like
just-
a version of a Maroon 5 song that was all like
Maroon
string
5.
quartet.
Yeah, they have like a Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball, like to a string quartet. So just
Which I didn't pick up on at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
You told me, and I was like, oh, that's what's going on.
Like I've gone back and just listened
Yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah.
music just because I'm like, this is so neat how they do it. And just the I love the choreography and like the dance numbers to those songs are just really beautiful. And just kind of, I feel like when you watch it, you're like drawn into the world, just how well it's put on.
I feel like almost every woman I know loves like the courtship stuff for some reason. I don't know. Can you tell me like what is it about that? Like the I'm not even like Mr. Darcy. What's that from?
Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, like all,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff where there's like they're supposed to have a chaperone if they go somewhere, and then there's just this very elaborate by nowadays standards sense of courtship that just doesn't exist anymore. Like what is it about there that speaks to so many women's hearts?
I don't know. I mean, in this show specifically, I mean, just the whole like being presented to society and all the dressing up and like Daphne's claimed as the
gowns,
diamond of the season, and it's just like very this show at least it's very like princess like all the women.
I love too. I don't know if we want to dive into the theology
go.
at all
Let's
yet.
go.
But
Let's go
okay,
there.
well, I just was going to say that I just love I'm kind of a sucker for romance and just like a man pursuing a woman and just, I don't know, I feel like that's one of the things I love about Christianity, just Jesus pursuing us, and he's like the ultimate romancer and is always trying to win over our hearts, and he just pursues us in a way with love and waits patiently for us. And it's like, our own will to love him back. And so I just feel like, I don't know if that dives way too deep
No,
into
not
that,
at all.
but just
Well,
I love,
that's
and I feel like just
yeah.
the story of a classic of a man pursuing a woman, it's just beautiful, and I feel like just really tugs at the female heart.
Yeah, so in the scriptures, there's a bunch of metaphors that the scriptures use to describe God's relationship with his people, and the most common one is one of father to child, but the second most common one is one of a groom to the bride. And from the beginning, there's Adam and Eve. Like sometimes they say that the Bible starts with a wedding and ends with a wedding, because the 22nd chapter of the book of Revelation is this wedding feast of the Lamb of God, Jesus. And it says that the heavenly Jerusalem, which is heaven, comes down like a bride adorned for her husband on her wedding night. And it's like the end of the world in Catholic, in the Bible, is compared to wedding night sex. Like that's what the end of the world is compared to. Like she's come down, she's dressed for her husband on the wedding night. Like that's God welcoming his people. So that's totally
Jesus' first miracle too was
oh
a wedding
was at a
feast.
wedding,
That's
absolutely.
why
Yeah, so it's totally throughout
Just
all of scripture. Yeah. So what is in this show? So let's kind of start with the show is mostly known, I think, for kind of like the steamy sex scenes. There's a lot of that. So let's kind of talk about that first. Like as married women of prayer, you're watching this show and it gets really steamy. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's really explicit. Like
to the point
there's
that I was like, do I tell Maddy that I watched this show? She's a good friend. Do I admit that I watched this?
Yeah, I watched it because she recommended it. No, it really is quite ridiculous. I mean, when you're watching it, you're just like, is this for real? Like,
Right.
oh my
Are they allowed to
gosh.
show this? Yeah.
Good grief.
Is it a lot of nudity?
Almost.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some nude scenes where, like, her brother is an artist, so, like, he goes into this place where they're painting, like, portraits of naked women, and there's not really any, there's, like, guy butts.
That's what I was about to say. I feel like it's either chest up or the back of a male.
Yeah. But if it's, like, during an intimate scene, it's not, there's not really chest up on a woman.
So
But
what's ridiculous? Is it just like a lot of noises and thrusting?
No.
And
yeah. There's a lot of thrusting and noises and
but they just position the camera in just the right way so you don't see any of the quote unquote naughty bits.
Right.
yes,
Or maybe
exactly.
maybe in a more holistic Catholic theology sense, we would say the beautiful bits. One time I was in class and a student referred to sex as doing the naughty, and I was like, well, if you're doing the naughty, you're doing it wrong. Sex is supposed to be beautiful, so within marriage, it's doing the beautiful. And then for the rest of the year, sex was referred to in class as doing the beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah. But so I kind of like rewatched the season because like you were like jotting down your notes and stuff, and I was like, good grief, I can't even remember the character names. Like, who was she talking
I had
about?
to Google it again. It's been a while. Yeah.
So I kind of like double speed, like went through to just kind of like jog my memory. And I was saying to Mike yesterday, I was like, nobody should watch this show. This is like absolutely ridiculous. Like, oh my gosh. And then today I was like, this show is so good.
It's a roller coaster. It is,
like,
yeah.
And the first season specifically, like when I talk about how good it is, I'm talking about the first season. We can talk a little bit about the second season, but I think the first season is so rich in like Catholic undertones, and we've talked about this. But
That's really,
Simon,
I feel like I wouldn't have kept watching it and recommended it if I hadn't seen some of those themes, you know, like for it being a secular show, there's
I mean, to start off with, like Simon and Daphne's relationship, you know, Daphne is like a smart woman, and she's not like the other women who are just like trying to marry for status and just swooning over whoever has the highest status.
Right.
Like she's looking for love because that's what her parents have.
Yeah.
So she's from a big family. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and her parents married for love and had a really beautiful relationship, which in this society wasn't really common. And that's what the mom hopes for all her kids, and that's what Daphne's looking for as well. And so Simon, her love interest is this duke, like, so he's really high status and super gorgeous. And all the women just kind of like want to like swoon over him, and Daphne has no idea who he is. And she's just like so not into him because of his you know, ego and stuff. So they come up with this pact for those of you who haven't watched it, what they do, they come up with this pact, you know, Daphne wants more suitors, and then Simon, he doesn't want to get married, so he wants women to stay away from him. So they come up with this pact to like act like they're courting each other. And that keeps women away from Simon because they think he's interested in Daphne. And then it makes all the other men want Daphne more because the Duke is after her.
So tell me about their relationship and what specifically you thought was like where you saw like the good Christian themes going on there.
Because they kind of like had it off the table of like them being suitors, their courtship was based off of friendship.
Yeah.
Which was really beautiful. So like they were just friends, and it was from that solid foundation that they grew to love each other, and not like, oh, you're a duke, oh, you're a beautiful woman, like this is a contract kind of thing.
Yeah, there was like a friendship that almost grew into a natural attraction to each other instead of it just being like, oh, you have a title and a lot of money, and I want to be the wife of a duke or whatever.
Yeah,
like
and
there was an attraction.
And they were like equals, like mentality wise, like the way they talk to each other and stuff. And you know, when they do end up wanting to get married, that's how they convince the queen to let them get married quicker. Is you know, Simon says like, she's my best friend basically, and the queen is like, you're very lucky to have found how important it is to have friendship as a basis of marriage. And she grants them being married quicker because of this.
I feel like you and I specifically, like our friendship has been like so important to our marriage throughout the years. And I feel like when we first started dating, it was kind of like, that was a good first date. That was a good second date. That was a good third date, you know, but it was like good enough for the next date, but it wasn't like we were crazy about each other right away. And then a couple months in, we were like, okay, this is something.
And then 7 months in, we were engaged.
That doesn't sound slow.
7 months after that, we were married. So it definitely picked up, you know. But I feel like even through especially the early parts of our marriage, you know, when we had some rough spots, like just relying on that friendship, like that has been so rock solid for us. So if you are out there and someone who is dating, just like, that's my advice for you, is just like really
Friendship.
focus on the friendship and make sure the person that you're with is somebody who can be like a really, really good friend. Because I definitely dated some girls who were super beautiful and in some ways like great girlfriends, but like not necessarily somebody I would have been friends with were I not like really attracted to them. You know what I mean? And I feel like even if I wasn't attracted to you, I'd still want to be friends with you because I think you're awesome. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But I also think you're super beautiful. So, yeah.
So let's get into.
She doesn't even let those compliments.
She's so used to it.
She's like, I'm just
I
going to
just,
keep going.
half of my day is flirting, basically.
I don't know how to respond to it when he's like every hour on the hour. Like,
He's still romancing you. It's gorgeous.
Extrovert with
Yeah,
extrovert
it's great.
sprinkles on top. That's what it is right here.
I love it.
All right, so tell
So
me
let's-
more about the good themes you see in their relationship.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the good themes. And then what else? You say something.
I would say just like once. Are we going to dive into like once they're married too?
Yeah.
Or no? Are we going
See,
there?
it gets
Okay.
into when they're married.
yeah, so that's
Okay.
good.
You know,
Do
yeah.
they have sex before they're married?
No.
No.
They don't.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Score one.
Yeah.
Score one for Simon
And that's
Daphne.
why I feel a little better because like all like the scenes between them, like they're married, you know,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful. So Daphne has her mom, she doesn't know anything about sex. She doesn't know about the act. I feel like people who haven't watched the show, they need like some understanding. if
Yeah,
they're
that's
gonna-
fine. Yeah.
So she doesn't know anything about sex. Her mom didn't teach her. She doesn't know how a baby's made.
Yeah.
And Simon,
Even though she has 7 siblings.
yes, yes. And there's like a scene where her mom tries to talk to her about it, like a couple nights before the wedding, and she's like, "Oh, you remember the 2 dogs on the farm?
I forgot about that scene.
they had
yeah.
babies,
Right.
and they didn't have to think about
Yeah,
it." Like, and
right.
Daphne is just like totally confused,
Yeah.
but like feels like she's supposed to be understanding
Supposed
what
to
her
know,
mom is
right.
talking to her
Yeah.
about, but
Yeah.
just very, very sheltered and innocent in that
Mm-hmm.
aspect. And Simon is very
Very
experienced.
experienced, That's really quick. I feel like that's a criticism. I feel like one thing that I love about the show is that it's these 8 siblings whose parents like really loved each other and didn't just marry for status and money, but like they married for love. And that's what the dad passes away when the kids are younger, but the mom's always encouraging them like to marry for love, and like, the siblings all love each other. And I feel like there's just such a great foundation and ideal there. However, I'm like, man, this mom like did not have the conversations that she should have with her daughters and ongoing conversations. I mean, it shouldn't just be a one-time
Yeah.
sit down when you're 13.
And that is
yeah.
common still today as
Yeah.
someone who has, talked about sex with literally thousands of teenagers over the years. Like I always say, all right, everyone in the class, like whose parents told them about sex? And it's about half and half. Like it's very frequently a minority. A lot of them find out from a friend or from pornography, or they just found out about something. Like a lot of parents just don't know how to bring it up and talk to their kids. And I feel like that's so important because they're going to find out about it other ways. Yeah.
Something like that happens in the show. Since Daphne has like no idea and she's trying to figure it out, because like once she's starting to develop feelings for Simon, she's starting to get like kind of like sexual feelings, and she's like doesn't know quite where to put it. Like she starts dreaming about him and just kind of like feeling that tension. And so she goes to Simon because she doesn't know. And Simon's like, oh, it's like a natural progression of like when you touch yourself at night. And she's like, what?
That's no, yeah.
And he's like, you don't touch yourself. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So anyways, like her first understanding basically is masturbation, because that was Simon's understanding.
Which is also a lot of people's understanding today.
Yeah. So, and that's where people will go. They'll go to their friends, and then like they have a poor understanding of, sexuality. And then it just kind of continues on.
Yeah. And I feel like there's almost this like kind of like shame and pressure to like, well, I should know. And I don't ask questions, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm sure among like teens or whatever, like I should know what's going on. So I'm not going to ask.
So nowadays
I'm
they just go
gonna
to Google,
assume. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they find out. So I think it's like super important to talk to your kids about, and again have it be an ongoing conversation, because kids are curious. They're gonna go. So and I feel like as adults, so many of us have still some issues regarding sex because it is so shrouded in shame and even well-meaning religious people a lot of times can pour a whole lot of heaping dose of shame, like, oh, sex is bad and sex is dirty, and the real vision of sexuality from a Christian perspective is sex is this beautiful, powerful thing. When I was teaching about sexuality, I would often use the image of a fire. Like, fire is one of the most amazing inventions ever. Like, it powers the combustion engine that runs all our vehicles, that like runs our power plants. It's why we have lights and cameras. Like, it's how we run our society. It keeps us warm. It cooks our food. Like, it's how civilization was built. But everywhere you go on the side of the road, there's a fire hydrant. Every town has a fire department. There's sprinklers and a fire code. Like, we have so many precautions around fire, not because fire is bad, but because fire is powerful. And sex is the same way. We have all these rules and regulations and guides for sex, not because sex is bad, but because sex is powerful. And when it's good, like, it's awesome. I have a quote here from this is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church itself. It says, "The acts in marriage whereby this is paragraph 2362, if you want to look it up. The acts in marriage by which the intimate and chaste union of the spouses takes place are noble and honorable. The truly human performance of these acts fosters the self-giving they signify and enriches the spouses in joy and gratitude. Sexuality is a source of joy and pleasure. The Creator himself established it in the generative function. Spouses should experience pleasure and enjoyment of body and spirit. Therefore, the spouses do nothing evil in seeking this pleasure and enjoyment. They accept what the Creator has intended for them. At the same time, spouses should know how to keep themselves within the limits of just moderation." So even within marriage, there's this chastity, and we use this word chastity in the church, and most people think it means just not having sex, which is abstinence. Abstinence is what that means, not having sex. But chastity is the virtue, it's the good quality of using your sexuality, and the way the Catechism says, is in a truly human way. Not just like animals, not just like the dogs, right? It's two people connecting, and it's not about the performance. It's about the vulnerability and the openness to each other. It's about two people just saying, "I love you completely. I love you completely. I accept everything from you." And we talk in the church that
I give everything.
And I
to
give
you.
everything to you. I give everything to you, and I accept everything from you. I'm open to kids. The four traditional marriage vows in Christianity, and the Catholic Church still uses this, are free, total, faithful, fruitful. And the priest will ask you this at your Catholic wedding: have you come here freely and without reservation to give yourself totally to this person? So that's the second one, total. Free, have you come here freely? Second, without reservation to give yourself totally to this person. Will you be faithful to them? That's the third one, as a husband or wife. And will you accept children lovingly from God and bring them up according to the law of love in the church? And so you're not just, like, I remember that song that was out a few years ago. It was like, "Tonight, give me everything tonight." And that song is right and wrong, right? Because it's wrong because sex does give you everything, right? But in marriage, like, it's actually giving everything, right? You're standing up there in front of your family and their family and God and the whole community and saying, "I'm going to take this person and I'm going to take care of them, even if they get cancer next week. Even if they turn out to be an addict, even if this, even if that, I give myself to you totally. Tonight, give me everything," right? But the way Neo sings that song is like, "Hey, on the dance floor, give me everything." But he
Just
doesn't.
one night.
Yeah, but he doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. Like, he's not saying, "I want to have kids with you tonight. I want to share a mortgage with you tonight. I want to. When you're old and incontinent, I want to change your diapers for you tonight." Like, but that's the beauty of marriage, right? Mm-hmm. That is what sex signifies. It's a total self-gift. Yeah. And the reason why the church has all these rules, like don't have sex outside of marriage, don't cheat on your spouse, even everything down to contraception and homosexuality, and every sexual rule the church has, it all comes down to this total self-gift of these two complementary bodies. And the way that man and woman can unite themselves is like nothing else. And it's a symbol of our relationship with God. And as much as I want you and you want me. And as much as we can unite ourselves, like that is just a foretaste of how much God wants us and how much we want God and how we're going to be united to him in heaven. And it's just like mind blown. It's this beautiful vision that we just get like a small taste of it here.
Yeah.
So anyway.
That's all that is a really good segue
Awesome.
into all the like Catholicness of
All right,
Daphne
lay it on
and
me.
Simon.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so they get married, and Simon had a rough life. His dad was like a complete jerk, absent father. Mother died when he was born. He has
trauma.
this a lot of trauma, and and his dad was obsessed with continuing the lineage. So like that's why his mom kind of died, because he was obsessed with
Having a son.
And he makes a promise to his dad, a vow to his dad on his deathbed, and he's like, I just want you to know that the lineage
family line
is
like
gonna
stops
die.
with me. Like
Stops
I will
with
not
me.
have an heir.
Yeah. So they get married, and Simon.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
He tells her, I cannot have children. So she thinks, well, she doesn't understand really how children are made anyways, but she thinks, oh, like there's
something
something
physically.
biologically, physically wrong with him. He cannot have children.
And she accepts that because she loves him. So, they get married and they're on their honeymoon, and it's just like wedded bliss. And you said something about like the complementarity of the bodies and stuff like that. And the first scene where, their honeymoon night, I really kind of love, because, she's kind of like, what's going on? What's this I'm feeling? Like, what are you doing? And, he says, like, do you want me to stop? I would like you to show you more. And, they're getting together, and they're on the bed, and there's like this natural instinct that Daphne's like, Simon, I need you closer.
Yeah.
There's like, she knows that there's a way to be closer.
Right.
And, and that's when he kind of like takes off his pants, and she looks at him, and she's like, oh.
Yeah. Kind of like in the Notebook when like,
She like, it like connects, and
Yeah.
it's like this intuition that like, oh, our bodies go together,
Right.
and like,
Yeah.
and we're united.
So John Paul II, who was our Pope 2 popes ago, he wrote the Theology of the Body, which is all about sexuality. And he says, it says in the book of Genesis that God looks at Adam and he says, it's not good for the man to be alone. And so he gives him all these animals, but none of them are a suitable partner. And finally, when he makes Eve from his core, from his heart, from his rib, it says, at last this one is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And what he says is, what that means is like, it's not good for man to be alone. Like, we're meant for relationship, we're meant for community. And that's written into our bodies. Like, if aliens from outer space came and they found just a man and they examined his body, they'd be like, all right, respiratory system, check. Cardio system, check. Reproductive system, there's only half a system here, right? They could hypothesize a woman from the man's body by what's missing, right? And if they found a woman's body, they could do the same thing. Like, there's something missing here that doesn't add up. Like, the bodies, the sexual reproductive systems are two halves of a whole. And John Paul II says, like, that is, God put that in our bodies so that we would know that we're meant for relationship, and not in relationship with each other and relationship with God. And what did Jesus say is the two great commandments? Love God above all things and love your neighbor as yourself. And God wrote that like on our bodies. So yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay, so
so
she wants him closer.
Yes.
And I
And
assume
they get closer.
And they get closer.
They get real close.
Yeah.
multiple times.
Anyways, but every time, they climax, Simon withdraws. And
Meaning like he pulls out of
he
it.
pulls out.
This is not the episode to listen to with your kids, by the way. Sorry, I should have said that earlier.
We are parents, but
So,
don't listen to us.
Unless you want to talk with them about sex.
That's
and then
true.
maybe, yeah. So
I'm
anyway,
a nurse. I'm very comfortable talking about things.
Yeah, sorry. So he pulls out and does not climax inside of her.
Yes, and she doesn't think anything of it.
She doesn't, because she's never
She
been
doesn't
given
know.
the talk.
She has no
never
idea
been- yeah.
how a baby is
Right.
made. Like, so of course, like, one of the maids was talking about something, and she kind of got clued into like a man's seed, and she kind of was like,
She like starts to kind
she
of
starts to think
yeah.
about it, and she realizes that the next time they have sex, he does that, and she like realizes, okay, that's his seed. And so then she goes to another maid of hers, and she's like, I need you to tell me,
Yeah.
start to beginning.
Right.
How does this work?
Right.
And when she finds out, she is absolutely distraught.
Yeah.
She feels so betrayed that he's keeping that from her. She's just heartbroken.
Because it's no longer this, it's not that you cannot have children. It's you're explicitly,
You will not.
you will not. You're,
Yeah.
and you're
She's
keeping
like-
it from me. It's not like an
Yeah.
open conversation, and it's not a free, total, faithful, fruitful act.
Yeah.
Which is totally in line with Catholic
Right.
teaching
Yes.
on
Yes.
contraception. Like if two people are biologically unable to have children, like that's not a sin on their
Right.
part, and their sex is still complementarity. It's still a total self-gift. They're not holding anything back. Or two couples who are having sex during a time when the woman is infertile, either during part of her period or after menopause, like they're not withholding anything back. But with the act of contraception, then you're like intentionally sterilizing an otherwise fertile act, and so you're withholding something, and that's one of the reasons that the church is against contraception, is because it says you're not giving yourself totally to that person, you're withholding your fertility, and that is like it's kind of schizophrenic, because sex is always supposed to be this total self-gift, this bonding of the spouses, which is also open to life, and that's a spiritual life for the joy of the couple, but also an openness to physical life. So. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so she knows how it's done. She knows what he's
so
holding back. So what does she do about it? Does she do anything about it?
oh yeah, she does something.
Okay, what does she do?
She takes control. And so they like have a completed act for the first time, and he's like, what did you do? And she's like, what, she wanted to see if it was true that that's what he was doing. So when she found out how upset he was because he, climaxed inside of her, he was so upset. And up until this point, Simon hadn't revealed like all his childhood trauma. She knows nothing about this vow, his relationship with his dad. She doesn't know anything. So she just knows that like he's just not fully giving himself to her, and she doesn't understand why. And he eventually talks about his vow to his dad, but still not really any of the trauma around it. And she was like, what about your vows to me?
Yeah.
That's
Preach,
what she
Daphne.
said.
Preach.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She said,
You're not married to your dad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a dad
Yeah.
who's not even walking
Right.
the earth anymore. What about your vows to me? And I find that interesting because, like, to me, what she's saying makes sense as a Catholic.
Yeah, for sure.
the vow that she's talking about. But a lot of secular culture, like that, like free, total self is not really a part of vows, but like in her mind it was.
Yeah.
Like, you are withholding a big part of you. And it didn't really even seem like, to me, it was about like her actually getting pregnant or having
Right.
a baby. It was because like
I feel
you
like she
are
just
not
she-
totally giving
yeah.
yourself to me.
Yeah, and I feel like she
And-
just instinctively almost like knew that like there was something missing, which is kind of
Yeah.
why, like I was saying earlier, why I almost recommended this show to Maddy, because I was like, I feel like for a secular show, it has so many like Catholic undertones, because like she knows, and like even in season 2 or whatever, like every sexual act that's outside of marriage, like there's either like heartbreak or somebody gets hurt, like,
Yeah.
and even within the marriage, like I feel like she instinctively knows that, it's pleasurable, it feels good, like they're learning about their bodies, but like she kind of is like, okay, what's going on? Like there's something not quite right.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's just really shows the beauty of the vocation of marriage and the marital
Yeah.
act, and how you are supposed to give of each other,
Yeah.
fully. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, she knew that.
Something I was going to say before, just as a man, in our society, like men aren't supposed to have feelings, and we're supposed to be strong, and we're not supposed to like let we're supposed to be low maintenance and not let there be any problems or whatever. And I feel like that's been a area of growth in our own marriage, of like I have to let you know when things are wrong. Otherwise, how are you supposed to know how to love me? You know, and how are you supposed to know how to help me? And I feel like, especially in the first few years of our marriage, every once in a while, like I would just randomly, seemed random, especially to you, kind of out of the blue, have a bad day, and you'd be like, "Where is all this coming from?" And I'd be like, "Well,
You're never upset or anxious or whatever. So what's your problem?
yeah." Yeah. So I felt like in a lot of ways I was loving you by trying to deal with that stuff in other ways, trying to not let it out. But I was actually keeping you from loving me by not letting you know that this was bothering me or that was bothering me or I would have liked this or this was happening. And anyway, so I feel like that's been a real area of growth for us. And we feel a lot more connected and I feel a lot more loved and you feel a lot more like it just has been good all the way around. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You're talking a little bit before this too. I feel like that's a theme in the show is that like the main male characters in both seasons, both Simon and Anthony, like they bury their feelings, they bury this like trauma from their past, and it affects their present, it affects their future, and like I feel like there's some beauty. Like I feel like in our current age right now of like people seeking out mental health resources and making that a priority in their lives and recognizing like I don't want to carry on like generational trauma from my past or like or as men like you mentioned like being able to talk with your spouse or with a friend or somebody you can trust about how you're feeling so that you're not just this I'm like macho, I need to cover this up.
Because men are allowed to be mad or happy. Like
Right.
those are the two
Yeah.
emotions. We're not allowed to be sad. We're not allowed to be insecure.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times men just get angry and they get aggressive and that's how they cover it up. I listened the Restore the Glory podcast. I had Jake Kim on the Batman episode a few months back, and one of the things he says on the Restore the Glory podcast, it's two Catholic psychologists, is he says, really at the core of every man is this little boy that's just like, please love me, please love me, please love me. And especially when it comes to sex, like, we're supposed to be macho and be able to do this and do that and perform or whatever, but like at the core, it's just like, you just want to be loved. And when you're not able to accept that, then you can't actually be a real man. And as Christians, who should be our model of real manliness is Christ. And Christ is the lion and the lamb. Yes, he's strong. Yes, he's powerful. Yes, he can stand up to Pilate. And yes, he can stand up to the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Roman guard. But he's also like gentle. And he like weeps at Lazarus's tomb. And he like weeps in the garden. And he's like so tender and gentle, and like learning that gentleness and that strength, like that should be like my model of manliness, not like Tom Cruise and Top Gun or whoever, So anyway, so they do end up having a completed act.
Yes.
Okay. And does Simon stay mad or do they?
Oh yeah, he's so mad. He's like, I'm gonna watch until I know whether you're pregnant or not, and if you're not pregnant, we'll live as husband and wife in name only. So they're just like really mad at each other, but like at the same time, like they really love each other. And kind of on the point that you guys were just talking about, like men kind of sharing their feelings and stuff. Daphne has to go kind of like behind Simon to figure out where all this,
Right. He doesn't.
vendetta
he's not
is
open.
kind of,
Yes.
yeah.
He's
So
not
she
open
like
with her from the
finds
beginning about
letters. She finds letters from her
background
father,
and his
and she
past,
kind of
yeah.
figures out his past, and it changes her heart, and she approaches it not from anger and bitterness, but she kind of decides like, I love him, and the
quote.
the
Yeah.
cold opening. That's where this quote is from. Is she
Like I love all of
she
you.
approaches
Yeah.
she approaches him with love and understanding, and that kind of makes Simon feel safe. And that's really where his conversion of heart comes. And he ends up making that choice of freely giving himself. And I really think it's amazing how the actors, like, maybe I'm just reading into things because I'm Catholic, but
Yeah.
you know, all the like scenes and the acts, just like you were talking about, like Daphne like knows something's like there's a different tone to it. And then in one of the last scenes with the two of them, when he like totally gives himself and it's a completed act, like by choice, they're not trying to like deceive each other.
Right.
There's like
Yeah.
a total different tone to that scene.
Yeah. There's
And
like, yeah, like freedom and like
yes,
true
yes,
love.
it's really
Yeah.
beautiful,
Yeah, it
and
is.
just
Yeah.
like the way the actors like act it out and are able to portray that, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Another thing that I found very Catholic is, and this is more on Daphne, but like, you know, all the scenes where like they're doing like foreplay or something, it's always like it always ends with
Oh, yeah.
a completed act,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So like, you know, Simon will be going down on Daphne and you know, she'll be like wait, and like, you know,
Yeah.
they come together and you know, or he'll like be doing other stuff and he'll be like tell me what you want, and she's like I want you, and it's like it's interesting how that is how it always ends up.
Yeah, so
Which-
for those of you who are not familiar with Catholic theology on
going
this,
there.
yeah, so in Catholic theology on sex, like sex, like should always like include intercourse, like oral sex or manual stimulation should never like substitute for the completed intercourse act of sex. Like you should never be like, well, we don't want to get pregnant, so let's just do oral sex or let's just do manual stimulation or something like that. Like it should be like foreplay, afterplay, but it should end with male climaxing in the woman. So it is that free, total, faithful, fruitful complementarity of the sexes. And I think a lot of people hear that and they're just like, why is the church like so nitty gritty on like what acts you do and all that sort of thing? But I always try to remind people of this is like at the core of every single rule in the church is the good of the person and love. And when you start to substitute those acts, when you say, oh, well, we're not going to do sex, and this goes for people who are not married too, and they say, oh, well, we're not really breaking any rules because we're just doing oral sex or we're just doing manual stimulation or something like that. Like what happens is the people start to use each other for emotional and physical pleasure. And a lot of people think, well, as long as we really love each other, and when they say really love each other, what they mean is have really strong feelings for each other, which is not real love. By the way, the root of the word infatuation, like if you go back to the root, it literally means false fire. It means like a fake fire. Like it looks like fire, but it can't actually give you like warmth and do anything. And that's what those things end up doing if it's not in a committed relationship, if it's not free, total, faithful, fruitful, committed in marriage. Like if it's not that, the people start to use each other. And when you understand that, then all the other things about Catholic Church teaching on sex, premarital sex, homosexual relationships, all of that starts to make sense.
And love is, the meaning of love is to will the good of the other.
Exactly.
You mentioned that.
Yeah.
So are you doing that outside of marriage? Are you doing that when you're not able to fully give yourself?
Yep.
No, I feel like, you
Yeah.
know, if you answer that question, do I actually love this person? Am I willing their good, or am I just using them?
Yeah,
You know?
if you really love them, like there are four words for love in Greek, and that's the language of the New Testament. And it's like philia, which is like the friendship love, eros, which is like the passionate love of romance, storge, which is like the familial love, and then agape, which is the love of God. It's the virtue which perfects the other three. It's the self-sacrificial love, and marriage is all four. And so when you say, I really love this person, well, then you're married because they're your friend, you're passionate for them, they're now your family, and you're laying down your life for them self-sacrificially. So if you're not married, you don't actually really love them totally, right? You might love them in some of those ways, but until you've stood up in front of God and all their family and said, I'm going to take care of this person no matter what, and give myself to them and let them accept me, it's not the sort of love that sex says it is, right? And sex is speaking of that total self-gift. So if you're having sex and it's not marital, you're actually saying something untrue. You're actually like lying with your body. Your body is saying, I give myself to you completely, but you haven't actually done that. right? Your bodies are trying to like link genetic codes and create a new immortal soul. Like that's what your bodies are trying to do, you know? And I say none of this in judgment because I mean, I've made mistakes. We've made mistakes. All of us are sinners in need of grace, and God loves us and like accepts us back. So I say none of this in judgment or to like bring up anybody's sins before them. But if you're playing with fire and it's not in like a stable married relationship, it's going to burn you, you know? So
In other areas.
yeah,
There's
in
gonna be
other
trust issues or, you know, insecurities.
or drama and trauma and issues when you do get married later on. Like that, like all that stuff comes back up, you know? So, sorry, go ahead. Did you have somewhere you were going from that?
No, I have some random thoughts.
Okay, so
that
we're
aren't connected.
Yeah, so we got to kind of wrap this up. I kind of want to push back a little bit.
Okay.
Because I agree. Like it's like based on what you guys have said, it is really beautiful the way that they come together and he learns to be vulnerable and he changes. I think there can be something harmful about this. If you listen to our Sarah Bareilles episode with Kirsten Lyons from the Crushed podcast, she shared a story about how it was really important for her to realize that the story that she got from like every romantic movie growing up, is that if a man really loves you, he will change for you. And that means you're worth it. And I think that can be a really destructive narrative for women to believe, and it's in this show, right? That this idea that, oh, I got the dangerous man, and I'm all innocent and virtuous, but he's like dangerous and a bad boy, but I can change him because like I'm beautiful and wonderful enough, you know? And he does change, and a lot of people chase that and end up in abusive relationships, right? And so I think you gotta really be careful about that. And it makes a great story, it makes a great show, but you gotta be careful. And the other thing I was thinking is, it is really beautiful how Daphne just kind of naturally seems to know what to do, and he's all experienced and knows what to do, and they have like this beautiful thing. But like for a lot of people, I would guess like for most people, sex is not that easy. And like I know so many people that are struggling, like she's having trouble having an orgasm. He's all hung up on stuff he was taught about sex as a kid, you know, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction. There's this thing with like vaginismus or something where like the woman is so like anxious that like she will not open for the man, and so there's like these physical things, and then much postpartum, hormones going up and down, porn addiction. Like there are so many things that make sex difficult, and if when we compare ourselves to things like Bridgerton, it can make us feel really heartbroken, like there's something we're doing wrong, and like. I think it can be good if we look at it as like that can be the vision of what it can be. But like a lot of people have great marriages and a sex life that supports and that marriage in a really beautiful way that are not going to be having Simon and Daphne sex. You know what I mean? Like they literally have intimacy coordinators and choreographers, you know, and just like in The Princess Bride, they're fencing, but that's not what real fencing looks like, you know, like that's not what real sex is like for most people most of the time. Like the way Tom Cruise flies jets in Top Gun is like not the way most dogfights go. You know, the way Jackie Chan does martial arts is not the way most, you know, like there is some of it for TV. And when we compare ourselves to that, it can make us feel like there's something wrong with us when really it's just Hollywood. So I do want to kind of note that. So not to take away from anything you guys said, because I agree.
No, that's a good point. And it kind of touches on what I wanted to say in the beginning, but we kind of like went off. But you talked about like, oh, Simon's experienced and Daphne's, you know, not, and all that stuff. I wanted to say how, you know, like me and you, for example, we have different backgrounds before we were married. You had never had sex. I had. And, you know, when we got married, I felt like you were more experienced than I was. And I don't consider experience, now that I've been like in a married relationship, mechanics to me isn't experience now being in a married relationship. It's an ability to, you know, communicate and make your heart vulnerable. And a lot of people who maybe are just, you know, hooking up and having a lot of sex, I mean, yeah, that's mechanics, but they have no idea how to make, be vulnerable, be truly intimate. So I think their, just experience, in my definition, is very different than somebody who's just had a lot of sex.
Cool. I don't think you've ever told me that before, but cool. Glad we're podcasting. That's good. So, well, and I think I think also just like, and we can edit this out later if you feel like this is sharing too much. But I feel like even with us in 10 years we've been married, like there's definitely been ups and downs, you know? And like a few weeks ago, I feel like we had some of the best sex of our marriage. And then like,
So glad I'm here.
but then like this weekend it was really frustrating, you know? And anyway, we can edit this out. But I feel like anyway, just like
we've been
yeah, I know
had
you
some of
know.
these conversations.
I know you
already.
know. I assume you know pretty much everything. So, and I think that's important to have like somebody outside their relationship that you can talk to. So I'm never
With also keeping, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you, but
keeping-
still like keeping the respect of the other,
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
spouse. And,
Yeah. But anyway, I share that because I feel like there are so many people out there that never get to talk about sex with anybody. And they're just like, am I the only one going through this? Am I the only one not having Daphne and Simon sex? And like, you know, like, it's like most people are not having Daphne and Simon sex. So,
I think too, just the healing and restoration that can come through the sexual act within a marriage, no matter your past or your background, whether you've had experience or not, just like the open communication you can have with your spouse, and it's continual. Like no matter how many years you've been married, like there's so many different seasons you can go through, not just physically, but emotionally, and just having that communication with each other. And then, like you said too, Mike, maybe having a friend that you can trust who has a similar, is also married, or somebody that you can talk to and have those conversations and saying like, hey, this is what I'm going through. It's just really important to know that, you're not alone and that there are so many different seasons within marriage. Yeah.
and I might even suggest that like the conversation that you and I had like a day or so after the bad sex was like more foundational. I want to say bad, but frustrating. I guess, like that was better for our marriage overall, and probably more of a like that. Like I feel like that brought us closer than maybe good sex would have. So I think like what you were saying, like the interpersonal skills and knowledge and friendship is more important than the mechanics. So yeah. We can edit that out too if you want. We'll listen to this later and decide how vulnerable do we want to be with strangers on the
But
internet.
it led to a conversation, like you said.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
maybe the next time it's going to be the best.
We'll see. What are you doing in 10 minutes? No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's bring this thing in for a landing. So, all right, what should people watch this show?
I don't think it's black and white, yes or no, to be honest, because I'd say
Who should not watch this show?
I was just gonna say, I think like know yourself. If you start feeling like really uncomfortable or like I should not be watching this, I'd say either turn it off or maybe fast forward. I'd say like I would recommend like either watch it with your spouse maybe, because I think it can lead to good conversations with your spouse.
Yeah. I think it would be hard to watch as a single.
I was gonna say if you're single, I'd say probably don't watch it. Yeah.
I think it would be
I think
hard.
it gives, like you said, Mike. I think if you were single and maybe didn't have any sexual experience or anything, you would be like, oh, well, this is what it's gonna be like, or like, yeah. I think it could lead to, especially if you struggle with masturbation or, pornography, things like that. I think I would say, don't watch it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like I don't think I could watch it.
Yeah,
because that's something I have struggled with. So I think it's like,
or if you do watch it, I think if you feel like you can watch it and kind of watch it with a critical eye, and it's not leading you to temptation or anything. Sometimes like with scary things, sometimes I'll watch them at like 1.5 or double speed and like do it while I'm on a bike or something. And it's like, you're just not like as
tuned in. Yeah.
tuned in,
Yeah.
so like it's not like affecting you emotionally
That's
as much.
how I got through Stranger Things season 4.
But you know, as much as like I think that the acting is pretty awesome, especially Simon and Daphne and their dynamic, and I see all these Catholic undertones. I was telling Mike today, I was like, you know, they're still people. Like Daphne and Simon are real people in the real world, and like
The actors.
the actors, and like they really put themselves out there, you know, and that kind of, you know, I can't imagine that being a very secure feeling, like getting that intimate and and stuff like for millions and millions of people to see, and that just kind of like feels wrong that I'm supporting that.
Yeah, so I definitely think someone could be like, you know what, because this is because showing their bodies is kind of like exploitative. I'm not going to watch it, and I think that would be I could see that being a good prudential judgment. So
I'd say trust your gut, trust your conscience. Maybe just don't even tune in. If you, But there are Catholic.
But there are, well, and that's one of the reasons why I have this show is because there's so many things like
in the first season. We didn't really talk about the second season much, but
as
like,
I understand, the second season is like less graphic,
it's
but
way
it's like
less graphic,
but the sex is all outside of marriage for the most part. So
it's
But like I said before, there is like pain then and like heartbreak and
interesting.
Yeah.
Very
So,
cool.
anyway.
All right. So last thing I want to talk about. All right. So let's say there is young single woman or man. I'll let you guys talk to the women. I'll talk to the men. Young single woman or man out there who is struggling with their sexuality. Maybe they're addicted to porn. Maybe they are single and they don't want to be, and they're struggling in their singleness. Maybe they're in a relationship that is more sexual than they want it to be, and they're not living up to the ideals. Like, I don't know, what's your advice for a young woman, a single woman who is just kind of adrift in this world that is so sexually promiscuous? Like, what's your advice for them? What's your advice for yourself?
like
10 years ago.
a woman who's trying to
Who wants to live purity and wants to live the way that God has made us to love, you know?
I think my advice would be, one, trust in the mercy of God first and foremost, and just, you know, don't beat yourself up too much. I've heard many priests say, like, you know, the devil's favorite tool is discouragement. And, you know, whatever you're struggling with, and even if you do it again and again, you know, God loves you. And I think it can be hard to trust in his mercy, and you kind of get stuck in a point because you're not forgiving yourself. But you know, God does that for you, like you know. And I think I am like 110% advocate for therapy. I just think it's great for having somebody help you learn about yourself, maybe like getting to the root of where any addiction comes from, or insecurities that are making it hard for you to live the way you want to live. You know, thinking back to, you know, me 10 years, well, we've been married for 10 years, so 15 years ago, you know, who you're hanging out with is big. And that can be really hard because it's hard to find a community of people who will even just lift you up, even if they don't agree with, you know, how you live, or like they live differently, but like at least support you in that. Like, it's even hard to find that. Like, it's like, you know, the people I was hanging out with, it's just like first chance they could get to, you know, bring me down, they would. And, you know, that's not really a true friend. Or a true community that would, if they know how you're trying to live and stuff, not supporting you in that, even if they don't practice it that way. So yeah, therapy. Oh, and prayer. Prayer life. 100 and a million percent.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. So
Yeah.
ditto. I was gonna say. Well, I was thinking too. Like just absolutely like immersing yourself with just even one good friend who can help like lead you along that path if you're like trying to turn things around. Just being able to confide in somebody and have somebody who wants to the same thing for you and is trying to pursue virtue. And to like you were saying, just like his mercies are new every morning. Like there's no you can never. Like his mercy cannot be outdone. Like there's nothing you could ever do that like the Lord is not going to be willing to forgive and want to heal. And like I was saying before, like he's the ultimate romancer. He's always pursuing you, and he wants your love and for you to love him. And just anything you can get your hands on, JP2 Theology of the Body. That's kind of hard to just dive right into that, but just podcasts, books. I'd say just anything on theology of the body. I just feel like that was my big conversion. Like the first time I heard about theology of the body, my mind was just like, oh my gosh, it just totally changed the game. Like you said, from like abstinence to chastity of like, it's not this like, no, these are the rules. Like it just became this, like, this is the vision. This is like the heavenly banquet. Like this is for our good. And this is how God's design was meant to be, and it just elevated. Yeah, sorry, I'm going on a long tangent now, but it just elevated just how God created us and who He created us to be, and how He created us for each other, and just I'm just a big advocate for theology of the body. So anything.
Highly recommend Christopher West, who was on our
Yeah.
YouTube episode. He was probably the most famous theology of the body educator. So just go to ChristopherWest.com or just Google him, and you'll find he has a website with or a podcast with his wife, and he's excellent. And there's also a new website I just found called Good Catholic Sex. It's kind of new, so there's only like 5 blog articles or whatever, but it's mostly for married couples. They do have stuff for engaged couples, but they get into like nitty gritty. Like the last blog post was on like lubrication and stuff, and so like I think it's a really good resource. We'll put it in the show notes. I want to highlight just 2 things both of you said. Like you talked about like the mercy, like God forgives, but you also talked about being willing to do the healing through prayer and therapy and relationship. And like so many people, like when they hear the word sin, they think it's like God has this list of bad things, and if you do a bad thing, He's gonna hit you with a stick. And it's like, that's not it. It's like God is being like, hey, these are the things to stay away from or to be careful with, because if you use them in the wrong way, they're going to hurt you. And like the Catechism says, sin is a failure in love, and those failures in love hurt us. And so what I hear you guys saying is like, God always forgives you. The reason He's telling you to stay away from stuff is not just because He's like up there getting mad, like, oh, I told you not to do that. Is because he wants our healing, right? And like, so if you've done all this stuff, yes, there's absolute forgiveness for you, but you're also going to have some work to do, right? And it's hard. So that if you can't avoid that stuff, it's great. But if you have, like, it's not game over, So I think that's a really encouraging message. I have nothing to add. I have one quote here I want to share from a Jesuit priest. I've been reading a book on the Ignatian exercises. Father Andre Raviere. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but he says, man should make use of created things insofar as they help him in the attainment of his destiny, and that he should have nothing to do with them insofar as they're an obstacle or a hindrance to him. So that's kind of my motto when it comes to shows like this, is if watching a show like this is helping you in holiness, go ahead and watch. If it's not helping you in holiness, don't watch it. If it's helping you be a better person, watch it. If it's not, then don't. So that's kind of my final thought on this. If you have thoughts on any of this stuff, we would love to hear what you have to say in the comments. And even if you don't agree with us, that's fine. We're here to learn from each other. It's a dialogue. That's part of what we do here on this show. And we hope you chime in with that. I'm sure there's some things we said or we didn't say that you would disagree with, or we wish we'd said, or we wish you'd said a little bit differently. And that's fine. You're still welcome here, even if you don't agree with everything last thing we said. We hope that you can listen with an open heart and an open mind. And if there's someone that you think would benefit from this show, please just share it with them. That's the best way you can support what we do here at Pop Culture Catechism. I always ask my guests if they would close us in a prayer. Would one of you be willing to close us in a short prayer? If not,
I'll close in prayer since you did the opening.
Okay, great.
All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the
Holy Spirit. Amen.
Come, Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you so much for Mike and Maddy. Thank you for the witness of their marriage, for their openness and vulnerability with each other, and sharing with all of us here. Thank you for the gift of marriage. Thank you for giving us this beautiful imagery of heaven, of true love, and just please help us to continue to pursue love no matter our vocation. Help us to will the good of the other, and just be with us, Lord. And thank you for the opportunity to come together and have these conversations. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Emily, for being here and being open, and for
Thanks
Maddy.
for letting me third wheel it a little bit.
Shout out to Tom, who's at home watching the kids. If you would like to support this show as a patron, like Tom and Emily do, you can go to popculturecatechism.com and become a monthly patron. There are 6 levels that you can give at, and you get perks. There's perks for each one of those levels, so pick something that fits your monthly tithe or fits your budget, and you get access to exclusive content for every episode. I have a little bit extra for each one, and all the talks that I also do in my speaking ministry, I put in there as well. I have a new one that I just gave on finding Jesus in the Old Testament, so if you're in for a little Bible nerd stuff, that's in there as well. And also I just put in reviews of the new Stranger Things series that'll be in there as well. So lots of good stuff in the Awaken app. The Awaken app is not just for patrons. The Awaken Catholic app is free for everyone. It has a Catholic prayer library that's trilingual in Spanish and English and Latin. It's got a Catholic music library, Catholic prayer library, lots of good stuff, and also just a good Catholic Christian community for like-minded folks who don't want some of the toxicity that's in some of the other social media stuff. And then if you are a patron of one of the 8 shows on Awaken Catholic, then you also get access to a bunch of premium content, both for the show that you sponsor and a bunch of other stuff. There's a bunch of stuff over Lent. So there's lots of cool premium content with more coming all the time. So I want to give a special thank you to our patrons who support this show, especially Tom and Emily Comberiate, Carl and Melissa Gore, Lisa and Bob Tenney, Maggie and Steve Hubbard. One more thing. Thank you, Maddy, for being such a good sport. She's so tired. But I wanted to tell you about our patron exclusive content for this episode. We're going to be talking about our tips on sex for newlyweds. So if you want to know what our sex tips are for newlyweds, you can join at popculturecatechism.com, and that will be in there with all the other exclusive content. Thank you guys so much for all you do. And thank you, dear listeners, for listening. And we will see you next time.